Hello to all of our listeners, and welcome back to The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational. I'm your host, Kimberly. Now, as an alternative educator, I'm honestly all about taking your kids out of the system completely. But for a lot of parents, that's not an option. And this being the Parent Solution, I'd like to present solutions for as many parents as I can rather than just a specific niche. And so today I have a very special guest with me chatting about the shortcomings of the public and to some extent the private schooling system. For those of you listeners who are returning, you know that we often talk about the failures of the system and the need for a new one or a brand new slate. Today, I'm chatting with Mary Jackson, who is a parent and advocate for children within the system, particularly children with learning challenges and learning differences. Mary, hello. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Kimberly. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Of course, of course. I know that we have lots that we wanted to talk about, and I almost don't even know where to start. So maybe telling us a little bit more about your experience as a parent and as an advocate within the schooling system would be a good place to start.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I'm a wife. I'm mother of three. I have two kids that are on the spectrum, and actually, all three of mine have some challenges, but two were diagnosed. And so I've been through the whole process of getting a child diagnosed, waiting for a diagnosis, not knowing what I'm doing, trusting others to be doing what's best for my child. In the very beginning, that's about 16 years ago when I was at the throes of the public school system and
Mhm.
really green as grass, right? I didn't know what I was doing. But through my children's journeys and their experiences, that's how I became an advocate. And obviously, we're an advocate as soon as we get pregnant, correct? Because we have to start eating healthier and being very mindful of the food and the water and you can't touch cat litter and you can't touch the lint in the wash, all those things that we have to be really careful about. So we're
Mhm.
advocating for our babies as soon as we become pregnant. Um, and I was very uneducated going into, like, I had daycare. I had been around kids my whole life. I helped raise my brothers. So I thought I was already knew something, but I didn't know how much I didn't know until I
Right.
had
Isn't
my
that always how
children.
it goes?
Yeah, I'm like, what the, oh my gosh, I've just stepped into something that I have no clue what I'm doing here.
Mhm.
So but I have been in the public school system. I have been in the private school system. Presently, still in the private sector because it's suitable. It's very suitable for my 9-year-old. Okay, they
Mhm.
are meeting his needs at the present time. But my middle daughter is the one who took my advocating to a different level because she was abused in the public school system by her special education teacher when she was 4 or 5 years old for about 8 months. And I she was still mostly nonverbal at that point. Like, she could talk, but a lot of it you couldn't understand what she was saying. And because of the threats that were being given to my child, of course, what we were seeing were signs, but you can't put something on it when, like, you can't walk into a school and say there's something happening with my child. And nowadays I would do it, right? Because I know so much more now. But a typical parent would not walk into a school and go, okay, my kid's acting different and they're crying when they don't want to come to school and something's going on, right? Because the
Mhm.
school system, one, is going to protect their employees most of the
Absolutely.
time.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they will be a person who, I want to get to the root of this, and that's who you hope that you're going to be dealing with, right? And the situation I was in, every time I approached something, it was, oh, that's not happening here at school. I don't know what you're talking about. This is what was given to me, right? Now I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? Now I know better, and I'd be like, oh well, okay, you're lying because my kid's not lying, okay?
Right.
Um, but I mean, it wasn't just a case of separation anxiety with my child. It was
Mhm.
way, way more that. I mean, when you have a child who's potty trained and then all of a sudden they start standing up at their nap time and they're peeing on the floor at school, you got a problem. Something's happening with your child.
Yeah, something's going on.
There
Yeah.
are signs that you could look for to go deeper into there's something happening with my child. So I was in a lawsuit with six families. We were the seventh for several years. This is a long time ago. But from the moment that when I could grasp the idea and the thought and the information of what has actually happened to my daughter, I began a journey that was sort of like something took over for me, right? As a mama bear and as oh, somebody is going to correct this problem,
Mhm.
I went to Capitol Hill and I got meetings. Listen, I didn't know what I was doing, Kimberly. I just knew I had to talk to somebody and somebody had to fix this problem
Right.
now,
I
you
don't care
know?
who it
So
is, but you better get me someone in
I don't care
charge.
who it is. Yeah. But somebody's going to do it. I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do, but somebody's going to fix this. Right.
Mhm.
So, you have your precious 4 or 5-year-old child that's now been damaged at the hands of someone else. It should never happen. Should never be allowed to happen. And, I've never written about it. Someday I will when I can get to that place. But as the whole thing unfolded, it was like something out of a movie. Seriously. The whole good old boy system and somebody rubbing somebody's back and lying. I mean, I watched people lie on the stand. I watched we saw people who came forth with testimony and then left the state. Okay. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that happened. So
Wow.
yeah, so that changed me as an advocate. So I pursued law and changing law in the state where I live. I'm still working on some of that actually this summer on an anti-bullying situation. But I was met with a lot of resistance. When people first hear a story about your child, being actually abused in a public school, it's shocking, right? And people are first concerned, and then you see a glaze come over a person's eyes because they just can't believe it actually happened. And you
Mhm.
must be lying. You must be some wacko mom, I guess. But for me, the police department called me to tell me what had been happening to my child. So obviously I'm not lying
Mhm.
because I can't make that up, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that was devastating, And then after my son was born, with all the challenges he had, I went to Vanderbilt University and I got certified as to become a certified advocate. So I could not only help my children more, but I could help other people.
Mhm.
And so I think one of the most important things for us to do is as parents, or caregivers, whoever's taking care of the child that has the needs, is to educate yourself every possible way you can.
Mhm.
Law, find out what your rights are. What are the child's rights? What are the rights for the state that you live in? What is the school responsible for? I mean, and you want to be able to go to a school and work as a team, because in the end, the child is the most important thing in the whole scenario. It's really
Should
not
be.
anyone
Yes.
else but the child. It should be, yes. So, but education is key to go from being a victim to a victor and to empower your kid. It's
Mhm.
vital, because I could have stayed in a place of feeling like my child was victimized, my family was victimized, but you can't do that. You can't stay there forever. You can't, when you're fighting against a system that's so big and so backwards. You've got to come and find the silver lining in all of it. You've got to find a way out to make things better.
Mhm.
You don't have a choice, right?
I like how you said that it's okay to feel victimized. It's okay to, like, I mean, it's not okay to be victimized, but it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to kind of make peace with that, but you can't stay there. You have to move on. And you're right.
Mhm.
Education is a huge part of that, and knowing not education in the typical sense of like you're reading, writing, and arithmetic, but education in the sense of being able to go to somebody, or knowing where to find the information if you don't know it yourself, if you've not taken it upon yourself to learn the things that you need to learn to advocate for your child in whatever way that might be, right? And every child is different, and every learning challenge is different. I really think that it is important for parents and for educators too to advocate for the children that they are taking care of, because if we don't, then who will?
Right? You'll end up having something that could be so much better not be its best, the things I've seen my own children overcome through the therapies that they've had, because early intervention is key to overcome things with children with challenges.
Mm-hmm.
It's very vital. It can make all the difference in their life. And to watch what they've overcome, to know the brain and the makeup and the workup of the human, of what the human can overcome, to not do that for an individual, it
Mm-hmm.
is just a crime. It's terrible. We want to empower our children to be the best they can be.
100%.
Um,
100%.
even with disability, we never want to tell them, no, you can't do that because you have whatever going on, you know? So I just, um, I just think it's so important. Like for my kids, I always encourage them. I never tell them they can't do it. And I always say, unless it's illegal, right? We don't want them doing things that are bad, but you know what I mean?
You
You
can
know,
go kill
I want
whoever you want and do whatever. Yeah.
right. But, you know, like for my little guy who has proprioception issues and he, you know, being off the ground has been an issue for him and all the fears and the sensory, keep encouraging, just gentle encouragement, re-entering, reintroducing things, just continue so that they can finally, hopefully, just become desensitized to it. You know, it's not everything, but a lot of things they can. I mean, my son was one that nobody could touch. Nobody could hold him. Nobody could. I could because I was his mother. So he's part of me, right? Because, you know, babies come from us. So they're
Yes.
part of you. That energy is still there. So I was about the only person who could do anything for him for a very, very long time. We're talking, you know, many years. Um, and, you know, he was one of those kiddos that when we were in this, when I was in the stroller, I mean, he was in the stroller. I'm not ready for a stroller yet, even though that would be fun, right? To have somebody push you around all day. If you're tired, you're walking around, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm gonna sit down and let somebody push me." But for him, we'd be, if we're out in public, if you came walking toward him, Kimberly, at the age of 1.5, 2, 3, 4 years of age, he would scream. I mean, it's like a blood curdling scream that scares the, you know what, out of everybody around.
Hmm.
So it's terrifying for the person walking up to the child who, oh, look at this sweet little child. And then it's like, you know, it's a piercing and it's embarrassing because you know that it's frightened somebody and he can't help how he feels. He can't
Hmm.
help what he's going through, you know. So the whole thing is very difficult, you know.
But you're doing it, and it sounds like he's gotten a lot better in terms of
Oh yeah,
being
now
able
he
to
hugs.
regulate those things.
He hugs. You know, I never stopped doing that. I never stopped encouraging the hugging, you know, even his OT therapist and his speech therapist, you know, whoever's been working with him all these years, because he's still in therapy. He's 9 now, but he's still,
Hmm.
you know, 4 times a week, he's OT and speech. And, you know, that's been worked on a whole lot. And he's overcome so much, you know, it's just
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. I have 2 kids who never didn't want to be touched by others. And then I have a snuggle bug, right? So every kid's different.
It's awesome to see though that as a mom you have taken it upon yourself to, I mean, to advocate for your children, but also to give
Mhm.
them the tools that they need in order to, I mean, not survive, but for lack of a better phrase, survive in the world today, right? That to be able to function,
Thrive.
really.
We want them to thrive, right? Because
Mhm.
if your child's born with a challenge, the world says they're broken. But as a mom, we see that beautiful baby and say, well, what are you talking about? This is my beautiful child, you know, no matter what they look like. Most of us would be, you know, I mean, there are cultures that unfortunately in this world still that hide that child. You know, that child is not to be seen by the public, which is really
Mhm.
sad because that
Yes,
child
for
still has a
sure.
gift in it. The child still has a gift. They have a reason to be here. They're here for reasons and they have things to offer this world in whatever shape that is. If you have a child who's blind, then you were forced in this lifetime to learn life as a blind person. How do they use their other senses? Isn't that
Mhm.
beautiful? So you think out, you get to think outside the box of your tiny little piece of the place in this world to see something bigger, brighter, different, you know? It's amazing.
Mhm. And it really speaks to the idea of everybody having their own talents and everyone having their own perspective on the world, and that everyone really does have something to offer. And I am a huge believer in that sort of fact that every child has a gift to offer. It's about allowing them to find that gift through whatever means necessary. I don't know. My personal opinion is that the public school system is not one that's going to allow children to discover their gifts, right? And to discover what they're good at. I don't think that that's the answer. But in terms of advocating for your children, I think that putting them in that position of being able to, like you said, thrive in an environment that's not necessarily the most friendly to them, and that's not necessarily the best sort of environment that's been designed for them.
It's been designed for the, like the greater whole of sort of like, let's get them all in, let's do what we need and get them all out. And
Yes.
and who is responsible for that? Who knows? Whoever started the system a long time ago, and it's just kind of reciprocated it. And I've been in private school also. We've experienced some things that are not very good either.
Mhm.
Nothing's perfect. And then homeschool has its challenges too, because I've done all three. And
Yeah.
so, if a person is looking for private education, I just had a phone call the other day with somebody from my husband's office. Actually, she's having some challenges with her son. What can I do? So we had a long conversation, and they're considering private. And I said, well, first of all, you got to call that school. You got to ask, are they set up for for education, special services for a child?
Mhm.
Because I've been in private sector before, they did not. So one of the first things is, can they handle what your child needs are? Will
Mhm.
they allow somebody to come in and help your child, speech, OT, parapro, aid, whatever it is, but that's advocating for your kid again, um, and homeschooling for children who have challenges, I think the social aspect for them is very important, to be around others, to
Mhm.
see, oh, okay, this is how the world works. This is what, is good for me to be doing. And like, okay, so it's good for me to take my spoon. I'll be very simple, saying,
Mhm.
okay, so I should, take my spoon and eat. I mean, how did we learn? We learned by watching our parents, right? We
Right.
learned by watching our siblings. Okay. So, we all eat with a spoon in our hand, not our foot,
Right.
kind of thing.
It sounds
We
silly.
want
It
to do
sounds
it.
silly, but it's true. And in that aspect, I think school is very much a socialization tool that we use. I mean, for all children, not just children with challenges, but a socialization tool that's used to introduce children to what you could say is how the world works. Now, whether that's right or wrong is a topic for a different podcast, but that's kind of, I think, the importance of school per se, or the purpose of school, I would say.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know. It's, and somebody was asking me about, um, they were asking me about a school the other day, because as an advocate, I get asked that, hey, do you think I should send my kid to this school? And I just said, listen, you know what? I haven't found anything perfect yet. I
Yeah.
have
And
not
that's
found perfect.
and therein lies a challenge. Nothing is perfect. It's just about creating a
Right.
system that works for your child, wherever that might be, or whatever that might be.
Right. And we have to have
Mhm.
compassion for the educators, because you're in a classroom setting, and in today, now more than ever, you're challenged with so many different levels that you have to teach at. And the training hasn't been there for a lot of these folks. Like
Mhm.
with what happened with my daughter, I sat and watched people on a stand talk about they didn't know the difference between neglect and abuse. Well, how do you not know the difference between that? And neither one is good. Okay,
Mhm.
so you should be reporting it in the first place.
Mhm.
Anything that crosses a border of anything that's okay. Yeah, and your gut instinct says you're watching something and go, yeah, that's not okay. Then you consciously need to be reporting this to someone, you
Mhm.
know, but the lack of funding for training is very much a part of this whole thing. And
Mhm.
that's just even training for a regular, just your average typical kids, you
Mhm.
know.
Let alone children with challenges. I know that the lack of support for funding, I know that was something we talked about earlier, that it is a huge problem that we do not have that collectively as a society, for these publicly funded schools, we don't have
Mhm.
funding that's necessary to be able to support the children in the school. And aren't they supposed to be the main priority?
Yeah, they are. And like here, so my little guy has been in private since he was kindergarten, because that was a good fit for him. Like he
Mhm.
needed a small classroom environment, still
Mhm.
get the social, but not too much, right? Because and I'll tell you this, Kimberly, and I don't talk about this very often, but I went into this school prior to him entering kindergarten to talk to the special services. And I said, listen, I can't tell you if my son can even sit in a room in a classroom for 7 hours without falling apart, throwing things. I have no idea what we're up against here because he's only ever done 2 days a week for like 2 or 3 years. He did 2 days of Mother's Day out. And I did that because one, mom needed some time, but
Mhm.
he needed that socialization, And at that time when he was like 2, 3, 4, he still wasn't, his verbal skills were not good still. Um, but he surprised all of us. Oh my gosh, he went right in, he fit in, he saturated it and soaked it up and learned, and he's totally blown everybody away. And this past school year, he has really blossomed and come out of his shell. Now he is out of his shell around us, but around others, he's very guarded, and very much an introvert. Um, but he feels so safe in the environment that he's now flourishing, and he won all these awards at the end of the school year, and they were all for most improved in his class. I was so proud of him. Oh my
Awesome.
gosh, I'm crying. Yeah, because this is a child who he couldn't swallow when he was born. He stopped growing in utero. We were told he might be brain damaged and never walk. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
their children can do amazing things in their life with the right support and the right guidance and the right love and the right therapies. They can conquer so many things.
And it's not right of us as a society or as parents, but particularly as parents, we don't ever want to put limits on what our child or our children can do. I know we talked about that
Right.
before we jumped on this podcast here about letting your children, like, I never ever let my kids use the words I can't. It's not I
Right.
can't,
Very
it's just it's rephrasing it, right? This is I actually actually was just having this conversation this morning. It's not about I can't, it's about this is something that's difficult and that is a challenge, but I'm going to do it anyways because I can do hard
good.
things. It's changing that mindset. And when you come upon a child with learning challenges, you especially want them to have that mindset. You don't want to feel like you're limiting them, and that you don't want to feel like they feel like they're limited, because then what are their opportunities? They're not going to want to take risks with their learning. They're not going to want to step outside the box. They're not really in their comfort zone in life. And you cannot help a child thrive in their environment if they don't want to step outside of their box and say, hey, I can do this. It's hard, but I'm going to do it.
Right, absolutely. And as a parent, if you're having trouble in the public school system, then call a meeting. You have a right, you have a legal right to call and say, hey, this is not working. So let's go back to the drawing board. We got to find out what's going to help Johnny, Timmy, Bobby, Sally, whoever it is. We've got to figure out together, how can we do this? Hey, we're doing this at home. Can you guys do this at school? Or
Mhm.
what's working in the classroom that I need to implement back at home to reinforce this better behavior? Because behavior is communication for children who are nonverbal or verbally challenged. And there are a lot of people who don't understand that. That kid's just being bad. That's a child who is spoiled or a brat or whatever they are. Even your typical kids, behavior is communication. So you've
Mhm.
got your 4-year-old in the middle of Walmart laying down on the floor screaming bloody murder, and as a parent you're probably embarrassed. Oh, we don't want everybody looking at us, and you're telling your child to shut up or whatever it is. Find out what's happening with that kid. Just ask them. They probably are tired. Maybe you've dragged them all over the place, or they've been at school and now they need to come home. They haven't had enough food. Maybe their sugars have dropped. They're tired, they're overstimulated, and they
Mhm.
just need somebody to hug them. They need somebody to say it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
If we just kind of, as parents, it's really hard, right? Because we're challenged. There are days you just want to scream at your kid because I can't take anymore, as an adult, right? We're
Mhm.
human, we have our limits, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, uh-huh, right? Yeah, we just all need to say, I'm having one of those days, leave me alone. And but if we can, and it is something you have to work at. I mean, it's hard, but if you can, I mean, what I found that worked with my guy is if I could come down to his level and take my vocal sound below his, 99% of the time we could avoid a disaster or a temper tantrum or a complete, the whole day is shot, or the whole hour or half hour, 30 minutes or wherever we are, or 2 hours, because there was that communication that wasn't happening. Like
Mhm.
he couldn't say how he felt. and I couldn't understand what was happening. So we're having this is what's happening here, between us, as opposed to, okay, so I bring my tone down below his. Sometimes I applied gentle pressure to like his maybe his belly and his back, that compression that a lot of children on the spectrum need, because they've got that sensory issue. So they need a tighter hug from you than what maybe I do to get that feedback that I'm getting a hug from you. I may be
Uh-huh.
able to have a gentle hug and that's all I need. But if I'm a sensory kid or I have sensory issues or challenges, I may need you to hold me super tight so that then I can go, okay, I've got my input, I've received my sensory satisfaction. Okay, so I got a hug and I can calm down and relax. And the more that you know about your child, whatever their needs are, the better you can handle all this with them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, this worked for my guy. So he never really, like, we didn't go into those horrible threes and fours with a non-communicative, non-verbal child. It was able to calm everything down, come with a calm voice, and then he could calm down himself. Because obviously, if your child's freaking out and then you freak out, then your child freaks out more, right? Because you're
Yes.
freaking out, they see it that you're yelling at them.
You just
Really, you're
escalate it.
responding. Yeah, because they're yelling at you, so we yell back. And so then what do you have? You have two people yelling at each other. That doesn't
And
work.
when has that ever worked to calm anybody down? Yeah.
Nobody, nobody yells, calm down. And you're like, your kid's like, I can't, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work. Like this morning, we had exactly that happening in our house, right? We had to leave for camp this morning, and Coach Carson couldn't find his shoes. And he's like, I can't find my shoes. And my daughter's like, we have to go. And then they're both, yeah. And it's just, everybody was just stressed in the moment. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
bring it down.
Let's take a breath and let's kind of reevaluate. Is this an emergency or is this something that we can deal with calmly? I think
Right.
that's,
Well, everybody's tired. And it's
yeah.
we're rushing out the door. Nobody wants to leave. And it's like, so it's one of those things. And you just got to
Mhm.
go, let's do it, just to restart. Let's just do a do-over right now.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard. I've
Yep.
had a kid who's nonverbal screaming at me all the time because they could not say how they felt. And, and,
Mhm.
and that's like, we need food, we need water, we need light, we need air, and we need to be heard. It's one of those essentials for humans, right?
Mhm. The five important essentials. I think
Yeah,
that's
there you go.
amazing that you have taught your children and that you've worked with your children to be able to teach them how to advocate for themselves in the sense of making sure that they can communicate properly, because that really is the key to advocacy is communication. And you as a parent, you as a mom, I think you're like, it sounds like you're doing an amazing job with making sure that you're educated and that you reach out to the right people and that you know what's going on. But you also have taught your children how to advocate for themselves, or to self advocate. And that's the biggest thing, really, because you're like, as parents, you're not going to be around forever. Your child is always your child, but you're going before they do, like, for the most part. And so you want to leave them with something that they can be able to use themselves. You want to leave them with a toolkit, I like to say. And that's not just parents, but particularly as parents, because we're supposed to be the primary socialization factor in our
Right.
child's
The
lives.
grown, the grown up.
Yes, exactly. And giving your child that ability to, I mean, to communicate, to advocate for themselves, to be able to have a set of life skills so that when you're not around anymore, or when they move out because they're adults, they have a solid toolkit to pull from. They have solid skills to build upon in order to be successful as adults, whatever they choose to do, whether it's, working a job or running a business or being an entrepreneur, whatever it is, right? You want to give your kids all the tools that they need to be able to give them as many opportunities, so that if a door opens for them, it's not like they're like, oh, but I can't go through that because, right? I mean, I'd rather
Welcome to
have,
dream big.
yeah, I'd rather have a child say, oh, well, right, that's not for me, than like, I wish I could, and then not be able
Yeah,
to, right?
absolutely. And for children, period. I mean, what I have found that works with my own kids is anything in the arts. I think it needs to be along with athletics and your academics. All of that helps to make a well-rounded
Mm-hmm.
child, whether they have challenges or not, because your arts can open a doorway for a child who is nonverbal to be able to
Mhm.
express themselves. You can see into their world, what's happening for them. And you can learn, that's a skill for communication with a child. For my middle daughter, art was, I believe now she is 18 and going to college for animation and filmmaking. That's how much
Wow.
art has been powerful in her life. This is a nonverbal child, right? Was nonverbal, developmentally delayed, language processing, reading comprehension issues. There was all, she had all these other challenges, and she was abused by a teacher, okay, for 8 months. And she is now going to go to college and going into animation and filmmaking. All right.
That's
Because
amazing.
you have to empower your kids to believe in themselves. But for her, art became her way of, I think, and looking over the years, that was her channel to work out all the trauma that she went through.
Mhm. All the emotions and all the excess like build up and everything. That's amazing.
Mhm.
I'm that makes me very happy to hear that your daughter is doing that. And what a success story from where she used to be to now
Mhm.
where she is. That's amazing. I think that's truly
She's
awesome.
my hero. She's one of my heroes. I mean, seriously, she is. She's, I always, I tear up every time about this, but she's been able to forgive more than I have about what happened to her. But that's the innocence of a child, right? The innocence of a human before they've had a trauma in their life. She'll say, God had a purpose for it, mom. And as a mom, you're like, there's no purpose that's good enough for my kid being injured or hurt by someone else, you know? But she's at a she still has triggers, she
Mhm.
probably will for her entire life. But intellectually, she can tell you that she's forgiven the situation. Subconsciously, there are things that are still there.
Right. But she has
So,
used it to her advantage. It's amazing, I
mhm,
think, what our kids can show us, and what the in like as you say, the innocence of a child, right, can show us
mhm.
about humanity. Because I don't know that I would be able to do the same thing. So I sympathize with you for sure.
Yeah, every time I think I can talk about it without tearing up, I can't. I'm just not at that place yet. And this was 2008, 2009. It's a long time ago.
Hmm.
But it just, I mean, you know, your child is precious to you, and nobody has the right to take their innocence or break them mentally and emotionally.
Hmm.
Nobody has that right. So, but children are just, they're amazing. I got to photograph at theater camp this morning. I got to photograph all the kids because it's a side thing I like to do. It's just a hobby. And since I'm friends with the owner, he's always like, "Hey, can you come take the headshots of the kids?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So spending an hour and a half with a bunch of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 year olds and
Hmm.
them, it's just precious time. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
So uplifting. I mean, children are just, their awe and wonder is what we need more in this world of.
I would agree. I would agree.
Mhm.
Somehow as adults, I think we lose a lot of that wonder, and we lose a lot of that creativity and curiosity, right? And I mean, for various reasons, but I think there's a general overall system that kind of takes that out of us as we get to be older. So a huge part of what is the driving force in my business is to try to keep that alive in students, and to try to always encourage that curiosity. And I know for you, you're a large advocate for that as well, for making sure that you're always I mean, trying to work within the boundaries that we have to be able to encourage that in children. um do
To
you
empower
have
them. We want to.
Yeah, 100%. Do you have any sorts of what is the thing that you're kind of working on? Are you working on anything at the moment to be able to sort of give that solution to parents?
Yeah, well, and actually on my website, I have a couple of downloadables. So I've got one that's like, I think it's 7 tips for raising a sensory, highly intuitive, empathic child. And there's
Mhm.
some writing prompts as well, because writing is such a great tool for all of us, right? So if we want to empower our kids and we want to teach them, because like Carson's my 9-year-old, his OT therapist has worked with him a lot on understanding his body and where his emotions are in his body and what's happening. So like
Mhm.
yesterday morning, he said to me, I have mom, I'm very nervous right now. I have butterflies in my stomach. Oh, okay. So he's been able to name it. So now we can talk about it so that it
Mhm.
doesn't have to go further from there, that escalates into something else. We can sort of diffuse it right then and there, and talk about why it is, give it a name, tame it, and then release it and let it go. These are skill sets that a child can learn. They take into the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
for having a job and being in a relationship with someone and being a parent one day. And being able to help our kids process how they're feeling or what they're going through is going to cut down on bullying,
Mhm.
suicide, and everything else, mentally, emotionally with kids. It's going to, there's no other way. I mean, it can only help a child.
Mhm.
So I have a friend, an author friend, and we are putting together some classes that we're going to be teaching online. And it is about parenting kids like this, but it's a how to survive also, as a parent of a child like this. As a parent of any kid, really, how do we survive it? How do we, I know through my life with my kids, I've been doing this 22 years now, as of uh what did I say, Friday, Wednesday, 22 years, right? Because she just turned
Wow.
22. And
Right.
I know. So, in all that time, I can't tell you how many times it's been like, okay, where is page 54? Like, I need a solution here. I need an answer. Somebody tell me what to do with this situation.
Mhm.
I didn't have that. There's so many times that we have those places in our life, right? We don't know what to do. We don't even know how to respond to our child about what they've just said to us, because that's like, you just said what? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you just said what? You know? And so so that's something we're gonna be teaching about, is just, those survival skills and how to do the best that you can do in order to be the best parent, to help raise the best child for them to be their best self, you
Mhm.
know? So these are we're teaching a variety of different things, and also how important it is for starting at home,
Mhm.
and what the privilege that we have and the honor we have as a human being in this world to raise another human. What a gift that is. But everything that child learns starts at home. Their first relationships are with brothers and sisters, right? Mom and dad. And if
Yeah.
we don't give them skill sets early, they can't do it out in real life. How are they going to make friends? How are they going to, I mean, siblings who fight a lot and are really mean and hateful to each other out in public, how are they going to have relationships with other people if that's how
Yeah.
they think they're supposed to treat somebody else?
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And like we had chatted about, like the family as the primary, or should be the primary socialization unit. And if you don't
Right.
have a strong family, whatever that looks like, if you don't have a strong family, how are you going to put out success, like successful adults and successful people? And success looks different for everyone. Like when I say successful, I'm not
Right.
talking about, it has to be like you have to have the next Bill Gates. My goodness, I would not want to give birth to the next Bill Gates, but like you know what I
Can
mean?
you
Like
imagine making that mine? I mean,
yeah,
he'd be like, be so bored with everything that you offered,
yeah.
probably.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
I know, right?
But
Yeah, we
it's
don't want that
success.
big a challenge as a parent.
Success looks different for everyone. So giving your
Right.
child like this, it's not about, oh, I need to do this. It's not about a grocery list of items to kind of check off, right? It's more of a holistic approach to, let me give you the skills that are necessary so that you can do whatever you want to do, and so that you can have your measure of success, whatever that is to you as a child and growing into a young
Right.
adult and then an adult.
Right. And even if your kid works at Walmart, not to put any of that down, works at Walmart, McDonald's, I don't care. If they are able to do that, and maybe they are completely Asperger's, high functioning ASD or whatever, but they have the
Mhm.
skill set to go and have a job and be able to do something like that's fantastic. That is a win win in their life. because not everybody
Absolutely.
can go do that, right? So like you said, the success of your child, it's all over the board.
Mhm.
But empowering them to fulfill that success, whatever shape that comes in for their life is, if your kid's the class clown and his job is making everybody laugh because he's so goofy, right?
Mhm.
Hey, that's successful because he's socializing,
Mhm. And he's
you
doing what he
know.
wants to do.
Well, he's doing what he wants to do as long as he's not getting in trouble,
As
right? And he's getting his
yes,
work done.
I think there's no harm in the harmless sort of fun of a class clown typically, with funny
Right.
jokes and things like that. But
We always need that, right? We need and adults need the smart aleck, in the group.
the smart
Sometimes
aleck
like that.
students, yes, we definitely do. As an educator, I will say some of my smart aleck students are my favorite ones. And I know I'm not supposed to
Oh,
have favorites, but they're my favorite ones because they have that little snarky attitude. And it's
right.
all it's all in good fun. It's never meant, disrespectfully or anything like that. It's all in good fun. So to me, that's an
Right.
acceptable form of fun or class clown kind of joke, if you want to put it that way.
Right. But I mean, I met the gamut of kids this morning, and
Mhm.
in just the sassy, super just cheesy smile and look at me, I'm so cute and my teeth are missing
Yeah.
and I mean names like Athena and Harley and such cool names these kids have to the 9-year-old who I said, "Okay, baby, can you give me a smile?" "I don't like smiles." "Well, why don't you like smiles?" "Because I think they're stupid." I went, "Okay, so all right. So you're thinking as an adult, okay, how do I connect with this child to find out what's happening, right?"
Mhm.
So not that it's my job, but just I need to have some sort of connection with this child because I need to get a picture of this child, right?
Mhm.
And she's like, "I'm kind of emo." And I went, "Oh, we're 9 going on 30. Okay. So what are you so emo about today?" And she said, "Well, I had to get up early." And I went, she kind of talked like that too. It was really
Yeah.
cute. And it's cute because I'm not her parent, right?
Right. Of course. Of
It's cute,
course.
right? I'm not dealing with that every day. But she said, "Yeah, I had to get up early. I had to get up at 7:30." I said, "Well, what time did you go to bed?" She said, 8:30. I go, "Well, that's almost 12 hours of sleep, right?" "Ugh, I need 14." I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, I mean,
I know.
I mean, I won't argue the value of sleep. Like children do need a lot of
Yeah,
sleep,
but
but
come
that's
on.
that's pretty funny. That's pretty
I know
funny.
that's the opposite of that's the opposite of my 9-year-old who's asked me for years, "Well, why do we need sleep? Are you sure we have to sleep?" I mean, I've been battling that forever, right? This is a
Really.
child who didn't sleep the first 2 years of his life. Yes, well,
Mhm.
does anybody stay up all night? No, we do not stay up all night. Mommy has to have sleep or I can't mommy. So
Yeah.
you have to go to bed. All those
Right.
conversations.
Yeah.
It's the
But
law.
again,
You'll go to jail. Yeah,
yeah.
you'll go to jail and you don't go to bed.
Yeah. But again, it's all about really meeting them where they're at, right? Not every parent has to have that conversation with their kid, I'm sure,
I
right?
know.
But if you have
No,
to,
no, some kids go to bed. I've got 3 who are afraid they're gonna miss something, I guess, at midnight. I don't know. It's like,
right.
I don't know about your house and anyone else listening, 7 o'clock, the batteries turn on for my kids. I mean, it's always been that way, and my husband does not understand, and it still makes him mad. It's been going on forever,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's just the way they're wired. I have no idea. We're not late at night people, but my children like to wake up at night. They'll be so
Right.
tired all day at 7 o'clock. Hey, hey. And I'm like, now you need to calm down for me because I've had a long day.
Yeah, yeah, but it has been this is not the 7 a.m. This is 7 p.m. We need to wind ourselves down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, right? Let's get do it
Therein
up at
therein
7
comes the power of communication for sure.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So kids are just they're just awesome. I
Yeah.
I just think it's so much more fun to be in their world and their imaginations and their thoughts and the adult world is
Mhm.
not the funnest place these days.
No, it's not. But I mean, that's why we have kids, right? I think that a lot of times they're the ones who keep the hope going. That's just my personal opinion, but a lot of times they're the ones that keep the hope going. It has been such a pleasure to have you on here, Mary. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. We might have to have you back. I think we've got more than a few other topics to explore.
I would love to. Oh, it's been so much fun, Kimberly. Thank you for having me on. And hopefully I don't know if we stuck to what you were wanting to talk about because we kind of went.
That's okay. Sometimes conversations happen. That's fine. It's totally all right. I very much enjoyed doing this podcast with you. I think it was very informative. And I know we talked about advocacy and making sure that you advocate for your child in whatever way that is, because every child is different, regardless of whether they have learning challenges or not. So I very much appreciate your expertise and your experience, like as a mom, as an advocate, and as a parent. It's much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
If you have any comments or questions, either about this issue or others that have come up for you, you can always find me on social media. It's Star Students on Facebook and LinkedIn, or starstudents.learning on Instagram. You can also reach out through email, which is all over social media channels. Thank you, as always, so much for listening, and I'll be back next week.